So, what is your name and what do you do?
My name's Aurora, and I do all kinds of stuff. I'm an artist, and I like to help other artists promote their work and be more excited about their art and showing their art to other people. I've spent a lot of time doing a lot of different things in my life, but yeah, I think I'm an artist.
How did you land the iconic role of Mecca on Downtown?
Land it. That's such a funny thing. The role of Mecca really kind of fell into my lap. It wasn't something that I was interested in. It wasn't something that I knew about. Me and Leyora were friends. Leyora played Chaka. And the two of us were friends. We met in an acting class in New York City in 1996. And we just became friends. And then we met up one day. I guess it was in December. I can't remember the date of that video. But it's, the holiday season. We were all out on the streets doing all kinds of stuff. And she told me that the night before, her and her friend Satya, who's also in our original video, had met some guy on the street, and that they were collecting stories of kids and like their lives in New York City. And I guess they had heard back from them. I don't know how any of these people were communicating with each other, by the way, because we all had beepers and like payphones at the time. But the next day, they had heard that something was wrong with the audio on the original recording. And so they wanted Leyora and Satya to come back. They had already done it the night before. They wanted them to come back another day, and I was hanging out with them, and so I went with them. And we told them, they were like, "Tell us stories about your life." And Satya and Leyora had really, kind of more fun stories than me. They were like going to clubs and I don't know, running around and had all these opinions about all these people. And I was just like in love with this guy who had a girlfriend. And I was talking about that and our like extremely deep connection, or so I thought at the time. I was very young and impressionable. So yeah, so I told them that story. I do think that like the chemistry and like if you watch the videos of Satya and Leyora, like they're just going back and forth, really quickly. They have really good rapport with each other. But I think ultimately Satya's voice was too similar to Leora's. And so they needed somebody that was a little bit more different. And so they went with my voice and they sort of combined me and Satya as a character. So yeah, after we did that original video, I don't remember how anybody contacted anybody. I mean, when we did the video, we were teenagers. We must have signed some type of release, maybe after the fact. I mean, we couldn't sign for ourselves legally. I have no idea how all that went down. But they got back in touch with us and they said that they were making it into a pilot. And they asked if we wanted to come and read for it. And we did. And that was it.
So, considering that Mecca was based on your real life personality, how accurate would you say this portrayal was?
Pretty accurate. I mean, I think that, like I said, I think there's a little bit of Satya in there where you see like more of the street smart parts of Mecca's character. When I was 15, when we filmed that first video with them in 1996, I had just moved a few months ago from Boston. And I had grown up in Boston and, become a teenager, and my mom was living in New York City, and my father couldn't really handle me and my brother anymore on his own. And so he sent me to live with my mom in New York City in like June of 1996. So I was like a few months into living in New York
Hmm.
at that time. And so I was new to all the whole thing, I was new to everything there, but it was, the summer of 96 that I got there. I was really soaking it up. I was making a lot of friends. We were on the streets with our beepers and like running around to payphones. And it was a lot of fun. And so, yeah, I was definitely the odd one out when it came to like experience on the streets of New York City.
That's interesting. Yeah, I feel like a lot of people kind of just assumed everyone who was part of the cast were just like New York natives, but it's very interesting
Mhm.
to learn that you grew up in Boston and you were just there like at the cusp of like being casted and
Yeah, yeah. I had just gotten there. I mean, I then spent 23 years in New York City, so I do feel like I have a lot of New York in me, but yeah, I was kind of new and I was like I was really into writing in my journal, and I wanted to, just learn as much. I don't know. I was just floating around. I'm kind of doing the same thing. But yeah, kind of dreamy. I'm a Pisces, so
I am.
um yeah, so I think that kind of goes with Mecca.
At Jennifer Parku asks, in your opinion, what made Mecca a relatable or memorable character for viewers?
I think she's really idealistic. I think that that's a quality that is more valuable now than it was back then. I think that in the 90s, it was not cool to be very idealistic and very optimistic. It was really cool to be like whatever and be, above it all and not caring about stuff. And so I think, if for anybody who related to it at the time, which I don't know what the audience was really like back then, it might have been something a little bit different than like the cool characters that were being portrayed at the time, which I think were much more cynical and like street smart and, above being bamboozled.
Mhm.
Where I think Mecca is kind of like down for it and like hoping for the best. And I think now the culture has really shifted, and I think that we are in a time where cynicism is not cool, and sincerity is. And I think Mecca is a really sincere character. And I mean, I think I'm a really sincere person, and I was not cool in the 90s, and I mean, I think I'm really cool now.
Yeah, I think that's also the reason why Mecca is a really popular character because she's so sincere and just like very caring
Mhm.
to the rest of the characters. And I'd say people also think that way for the character of Matt.
Mhm.
Very just laid back, very chill, not very judgmental.
Yeah, although I think Matt was like definitely cooler because he wasn't like, I don't know. I think Mecca was really willing to make a fool of herself in the pursuit of love, where Matt, I don't think he was going to be anybody's fool. Like he was kind of just like staying out of the drama for the
Right.
most part, if
Yeah.
I remember correctly.
At V6 Encent asks, what was it like working with the crew to create Downtown?
It was super fun. I mean, we did the initial video and then we visited the MTV studios a few times, which were I think it was at 1501 Broadway, near Times Square. And it was like all the way up. And me and Leyora would go to the studio, and then there was this restaurant underneath, like down in the basement of this big midtown office building that was called Mars Mars 5150, and maybe that was the address. Anyway, we used to go and we would go to meetings up there. And we would just like walk through the halls, and there's posters on the walls of the MTV offices, go sit in a boardroom. We didn't really interact with most of the other cast because, or at least I didn't, because me and Leora's scenes were kind of usually standalone. So I would record all my audio with Leora, and we did that at a studio in Hell's Kitchen called Sync Sound. And that was cool because like in Sync Sound, I mean, we were teenagers, and so I don't know, everything was cool about it. We would go into Sync Sound, and I remember what was that guy, Kevin Sorbo, I remember was there one day, and he was like Hercules at the time. And I wasn't a fan of Hercules or anything, but we were like, ooh, a famous person. And we would sit in the studio, we would joke around, we just had fun. Like we would just record these things, and like we didn't get paid that much. I mean, I remember getting the contract and being like, well, I mean, I feel like we could get paid more. And then we were like, who are we kidding? We're kids. Nobody knows us. It's not like we have recognizable, bankable voices. Like it'll just be for fun. And we did like half day or full day recordings, but like it didn't take long. Like all of those 13 episodes we did like in a few sessions. Um, and yeah, it was just really fun. And then we had the premiere. There was a premiere party, which was at like CBGB's had a gallery next door, the Omfug, that they had next door. And we had an opening party there, I remember, which I mean, I don't have any pictures or anything from that, but somebody probably does.
At Timmy Chris asks, do you feel that the series should have ended the way it did?
it would have been cool if it kept going, but like it's cool. I don't know. I'm kind of ambivalent about, like what happened versus what should have happened. I don't really like think about things like that. I like I like things that are just like standalone pieces of art. I think it's cool that it's a time capsule. I think it's cool that it didn't like have like a sophomore album that sucked. You know what I mean? Like I think it's cool that it didn't have to live up to something or change and evolve. And like there's a lot of disparity between two different seasons. Like I like that it's this little kind of package of goodness.
Right.
There's a lot of shows that have been like that are like incredible pieces of art through the years, so I'm not mad about it.
What information, if any, can you share on the scrapped season 2 of Downtown?
I don't know anything about it whatsoever.
Interesting.
I have no recollection of, it's possible that somebody told me something about it, but I like have no recollection whatsoever.
At 1738 Crafting asks, if there was a reboot, would you prefer the show stay in the 90s or set in modern day?
I don't know. That's a tough question because like I kind of like want to see what they could present for each concept, Like what if it was both? Like what if it was, I don't know. I think that if they did a reboot, I think it would have to be really playful, and I don't think that it would have to be trying to capture something. I think it would have to have evolved. Like obvious. Like I said, I haven't said it to you, but I have no idea if Chris Pronosky has any interest in doing anything else. But if he did, and if I was him, I would need to bring so much more to it because he's had an incredible career since then, creating so much art, creating so many shows, having so much more experience, and having so many new and diverse interests. That I don't think it could be like, let's jump off where we were. I think that's completely unrealistic. And I don't think it could be like a cookie cutter, like today, the kids of New York City, like they've done that with these other shows, like real life shows, like Full House or whatever. Now they have like the next generation, and I don't know who. I don't know. It's not for me. It's not for me. So the different concepts that I could think through, like there's like, okay, like let's just be the Simpsons and everybody stays the same age forever and they're in the same environment. There's that idea. Then there's, we revisit the same characters and they're like grown up now. That's weird. Then there's we set it in today and we look at kids today, like same demographic generation that they were looking at in downtown, and we see what their little underground fun is like. I think that's probably the most viable option, honestly. I don't think that it should be about the same characters, maybe the same archetypes updated for today. But it doesn't, I don't think there's a 90s version that's created now as a throwback. Like it's too ripe for criticism, and like that's not how it really, like it's just too messy and it's too throwback, and like let's just do something new and cool.
Right.
So I think the most viable option, if it were to come back, would be like a similar vision, but imposed on like today's kids.
Yeah. I think so too. I think that would really work. I also think that maybe, I don't know if like the original cast would be interested. It would be really cool if like they kind of like appeared as like cameos or like kind of like a mentor.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Something.
Yeah, like totally random characters who are just like still in the neighborhood. Yes, fine. But like I don't like Easter eggs,
Yeah. Right, yeah. Hmm.
That's what it would be. It would be something for the people who are from the original, who are looking at it from a nostalgic point of view, who are, who see that link, who like want to like who are interested in the legacy of it, but then also not relying on that for the new stories. I don't think that that's interesting or necessary. Like I don't really like they grew up and they became grown-ups and they got real lives, and like the let's continue with current culture, you know what I mean? I'm interested in current culture, like even if I'm older than it, like I want to know what the kids are doing. Like they're cool, it's new, it's creative.
Yeah. Create a new time capsule in a sense, right?
Yeah.
How did you feel after the show ended?
I was like ambivalent about it. I mean, I was such a kid. Like honestly, like I went and looked back in my journals. Like I'm like a journal. I'm Mecca, so like I keep all my journals from when I was like 13 years old. And I have like very little to say about my experience with the show. Like it really wasn't a huge part of it's oddly enough, like it's a bigger part of my life now than it was when I was participating in it. I was in high school, I was like doing terribly in high school. I ended up dropping out of high school. And I was just like concerned with my friends and hanging out. And I mean, I wasn't like thinking like, oh, this is a career or like this is something that I like long-term thinking was not in my brain
Mhm.
at that time. So it really like there was one thing that came after Downtown where I got like the opportunity to audition for a voiceover for like the MTV music video awards, or like maybe the movie awards, like announcing people coming onto the stage doing a voiceover for that. Um and it was cool because they paid me to audition, which I was like, damn, I didn't know that was the thing. But then I didn't get it, and I was just like, I don't really like auditioning. Like, I don't really like being rejected. Like it's kind of like painful. So like that doesn't make sense to me. So that was the last time I ever pursued acting.
Right.
Um, and actually I think Marco got the job for that video music awards or whatever.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Because I remember watching it that year and his voice was on it. I was like, I know that guy.
Yeah, you definitely come off I feel like a true artist because I feel like a lot of artists they try to like push in life and not just stick with one thing. I feel like that those are real creatives.
I mean, I don't know. Like I never really sort of pinpointed it before until kind of recently, but somebody said to me years ago, because I went to college when I was like 25, like I got my GED when I was 24 and I went to college when I was 25. I went to Brooklyn College. And I remember at one point I needed to like pick up a second major because I needed to like have a job after college and I didn't know what kind of career I wanted to go into. And I was like 28 at the time, and I was like, "Oh, I'm really scared. I don't want to go down a certain road and then have to turn around and have like invested." Like I was really concerned about what I was investing into something and whether I would feel like I had to stick it out because of that investment. And somebody said to me at that time, "You can always change your mind." And it's such a simple thing, but like I literally have that running through my head all the time. You can always change your mind. And it's really, I mean, my pursuits now are really like following my interests, and, trying to do as little damage as possible in whatever I do. And so, like, I would prefer not to work for like big corporations or like giant capitalistic things. I would prefer to like sell little pieces of art to like people who like my art just directly for an affordable price, and then like help other artists get their work out there because like, I worked in television for a while and I can help. So yeah, like I have zero ambition for like fame or wealth. All of my ambition has to do with like the kind of person that I want to be and like, sticking to that goal. I want to be proud of who I am and like not feel regretful toward like the way that I've treated anybody or like things that I've done to like get ahead or get money. I don't want to do anything harmful or shady to get money. Like I don't like that stuff. So
I respect that. That's good. What cherished memories do you hold of the late Leyora Zuberman?
Okay, this is a good one. So Leyora had a car because she lived in New Jersey. She was from Jersey. So sometimes she would come into Manhattan and like I never had a car, knew how to drive. My parents didn't have a car. So she would come into Manhattan and she would pick me up in her car and then we would blast music. And it was so fun. And this is something that like I live in California now and I drive a car and I love blasting music in my car with the windows down. Um, and I remember very vividly being in the car with her, blasting Cyndi Lauper, and like this was like in the late 90s. So it was like oldie, it was old music. But then I remember very, very much blasting, very, very well. I remember blasting Cher, Believe, when that came out. and being like, it sounds like her voice is like a computer. And it was like auto tune, like the beginning of auto tune. I remember hearing that for the first time with Leyora in her car. And also that Beastie Boys album that came out in like the late 90s. What was that one called? Do you remember? Intergalactic Planetary. That song.
That was that.
You know that Beastie Boys song?
Yeah, yeah, I know that one.
I remember being in the car with Leyora listening to that song.
That's a good song. Those are two really good songs, actually.
Yeah,
Believe in life after life, right?
exactly. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, those songs make me think of her. Because I remember those songs from that riding around in her car like one day in the late 90s.
I think it's a beautiful thing to have like your voice, right, be in a show with like a really close.
Mm.
That'll outlive us all, and it's just a beautiful thing, you know. And
Well, yeah, and it was funny because we used to be like whenever we would be together, we would introduce ourselves to people. It was always cute to be like Leyora and Aurora. Like, I don't know, we were just like goofy. I'm goofy. She was like open to the goofiness. And yeah.
what are some shows or movies Mecca would be a fan of in real life?
Okay, like what am I into? This is like kind of a little bit too on the nose, but I really like watching dating reality shows. Um, and it's not like, I mean, I'm not obsessed with like relationships anymore for myself. Like I've been single for over 12 years and I'm just like, I'm really chilling. And like, if that, like, I'm just not in pursuit. Um, but I'm so interested in the like psychology of people in relationships and like how they come to meet each other and like how they look at each other, look at themselves with each other. Like, so fascinating to me. So I watch all like most of the dating shows. I don't watch those like Love Island. Like I don't watch that kind of stuff usually. I usually watch the ones that are like a little bit more sincere, I guess. So you know, I like Love is Blind. I like Love on the Spectrum. I like Down for Love. I like The Bachelor. I just watched the Golden Bachelor finale last night. Which, oh my God, what a disappointment. I really like studying, you know, human psychology. And I think that those types of shows are really a good place to see, you know, how something happened and then how two different people experience it. And then like they just tell you in an interview. Like it's so cool.
I think a show you would really like. I'm not sure if you've seen it. I think it's called like
Mhm.
Couples Therapy. I'm not sure
Oh
if
my God, yes, I have seen it and I love it. It's amazing. I told like as soon as I watched it, I watched all of it immediately. And then I told everybody that I knew about it. And then I like sent multiple people my Showtime like sign in so that they could watch it so that we could talk about it because it was amazing. I love it.
yeah,
Love it.
yeah, because
I go ahead.
oh, sorry, I was gonna say yeah, because everything you were saying about like the psychology and all that stuff, I was like, that sounds like that show, you know, and I feel like you would have
Mm-hmm.
liked it. You've seen it, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really fascinating to me. I mean, I studied documentary film production when I went to college. I studied documentary film production and art history. I got a double major. And so, yeah, like obviously I'm looking at things like from a documentary, you know, making perspective, but um like I think therapy is so fascinating and like I feel like I have like a therapist in my head that's like, but why? You know, not just like as a 5-year-old about the world around me, but like as like toward myself. And so I'm very fascinated by how people are like figure out how to work with themselves and understand themselves and read themselves and have like objectivity about themselves and then how to put that together with another person. Like it's a really, you know, fascinating, delicate undertaking.
What is your wildest New York City experience?
I was there for a long time. I worked as a double decker New York City tour guide for a couple of years. And that was so cool and so fun. And that's what really got me. I mean, like I said, I had dropped out of high school and I really had not much interest in education at that point. I was like, I'm just going to live my life and see what happens. But once I became a tour guide on the double decker buses in New York City, I started learning about history. And it was really interesting. And then I got kind of turned on to education. None of this is wild at all, but like it was really fun and interesting. And then yeah, I got my GED. I went to Brooklyn College. I worked as a personal assistant for an actress for a couple of years. I worked in reality TV. I was a reality TV producer for 10 years. And yeah, I don't know that, I mean, I'm sure lots of wild things happened to me, but like I think most of the wild things were like near us, like, you know, near escapes from like bad things that could have happened. So I'm not sure that they're like notable.
What advice do you have for the hopeless romantics out there?
Mm, I think that this is so corny. I can't like say what I'm going to say because it's so corny, but I remember probably like 10 years ago really struggling with the concept of self-love. I remember a friend of mine was talking to me about it and she's like, you have to love yourself. And I was like, I was really, really consumed by the information I was getting about myself from outside of me. And I really thought that that was how I could tell if I was like doing a good job at life. And since then, I've really learned that like I'm the one who needs to like tell me how I'm doing. And that I think I've like kind of figured it out, maybe sort of. I don't know, I haven't been tested that much, but I think that if you are a hopeless romantic, I think honestly, like put other people aside and really work on having a really kind voice to yourself inside and really talking to yourself the way that you want to be talked to in your relationships. Like you've got to kind of get used to the goodness that you seek. And so you can kind of like play act that inside yourself. So yeah, I mean, I think really working on that is the move because I think that like in that way you don't that like romance like is something that you can give to yourself and you don't have to rely on someone outside of yourself. And also like you'll attract really loving people if that's how you feel about yourself inside. And so you'll have really good friendships, which are, you know, much better than a lot of relationships. So I don't know. I think that that's the move is like to just really, really listen to the voices inside your head and make sure that they're giving you a good message and like just really focus on that and try to like, unless you're like an asshole and people are like, you're being an asshole, you're hurting people. Unless that's happening, like really don't focus on what other people are telling you about yourself because they don't know the whole story.
And now we've reached the end, and here is your opportunity to give shout outs and share anything you've been working on.
You can like follow me on Instagram and TikTok, and I make art and I post it sometimes at Aurora in the desert. Look it up, you'll see me. I think that's kind of it. I mean, right now I'm kind of like I stopped working in TV. Not to say I never would again, but you know, I was traveling a lot and I got a dog over COVID, and so I want to stay home with my dog and like just not do that. So I really just want to work, you know, as an artist. I want to like make art. I want to sell it for, you know, low prices to people who want to buy art and would rather buy it from a person. The other thing that I do is I've been working with a few local artists. I'm in Palm Springs, California. So I've been working with a few local artists helping them with their like, you know, social media, digital stuff. There's a lot of amazing artists here who have very little knowledge of how to do this stuff because a lot of people here are a little bit older. So it's really cool to meet them, to hear their life story, you know, like they're older people, they have interesting lives, to see their artwork, to see their process, to like learn about, you know, whatever. And then to help them. Studied art history and documentary film production, and I worked in reality TV for about 10 years. So I'm kind of like trying to bring my passions and my experience together, like keep a roof over my head doing that instead of, you know, selling my time to big corporations.
That was wonderful. That was really great.